Please do not use the box. For your own mercy, don't even open it. Big Pete. There were only 3 people I really cared about the summer I turned 12. My mother, Gabrielle, my girlfriend from school, and Peter, Big Pete, who lived a half-mile down the road. I cared about Peter the most. Well, he didn't actually live there that summer. He was in Iraq, and I only understand now that I am old how much I missed him then. He was like my older brother, a friend and guardian, my hero, and the one reason no one ever messed with me at school. If he passed near my group during the day, usually at recess, he'd break from his group of friends and come over to give me a hand slap. Not a high five, but that cool, casual one you give about shoulder's height as you walk past, and he'd say, "What's up, bud?" That's all he needed to do. I would stand beaming as he walked on, ignoring my peers, who would be awed that Big Pete would give me that attention. He was known as an athlete, and his height and bulk were a presence that took up all the space wherever he went. When the others learned he was going to enlist as a Marine, my reputation grew with his. I didn't know it at the time, or maybe I did, I don't know, but he gave me the attention because my father had died when I was 10. It was a car wreck, and he died instantly. We had always known Pete's family, but he knew I would miss my father, and he came to the house often to do chores for my mother and include me in them, just as my father had. My mother had life insurance, so we still had a home, an old New Hampshire farm. But there were things like splitting firewood and mowing that expansive lawn that wouldn't get done by a mom and 2 kids. She paid him, but he could have gotten a job in town for better money. He was really there for me. The summer after he left, my mother wouldn't let me use the riding mower, and the tall grass encroached a little closer in every time I mowed. I struggled with the push mower, and many times, when salty sweat stung my eyes, I would almost curse him. It used to be easy. I would drive the ride-on mower, and he would just be there to supervise. Now it was exhausting and bitter. When I finished my chores, I would get a stick and then walk down to his house. The stick was so I could flick pebbles and crumbled asphalt off the road, and so I could try to kill flies. I would wiggle the stick, causing a whipping sound as the end flailed back and forth. Nailing a fly counted as an accomplishment. You couldn't see but only feel when the fly got struck, and then it would only be stunned. I would have to track where it fell and squash it with my foot. I went there because Pete's mother would give me candy and show me emails and posts from Peter if they were there. Pete was the youngest of their family, and all the other siblings were gone, so his mother was happy to have me over whenever I wanted. I didn't have to call ahead or anything. He emailed me too, but I would wait until going to his house before checking my account on their computer. Sometimes the inbox would be empty, visit after visit, but other times he would send a few words of encouragement and ask me about school. Sometimes he would talk about funny things that happened on the base, and he would mention firefights on occasion. But even at that age, I wondered if he was leaving out bad things that happened. I heard about IEDs going off, and I knew that could happen to anyone, anytime. But there were some things that couldn't have been lies, like getting guys to get air samples from the exhaust of a Bradley fighting vehicle by holding a plastic bag near the exhaust pipes, tying it off, and taking it to the mechanic for analysis. "I haven't gotten mean, Cam," he wrote. "All the new guys get pranks played on them." One time, he got me to ask my teacher to fill out an ID-10T form for me. He said it would be good for my college transcript someday. My teacher didn't know what that was, though, and it was not until a week had passed that Pete was back online to explain it to me. That time, we were on chat. Write it out, all caps, no spaces, no dash. it's spelled. Idiot. Only he could fool me all the way from Iraq. Gabrielle. Before I went home, I would sit on the front steps of their house and decide if I should see Gabrielle or not. Usually I did. For one thing, her house was on the way back, and the hairs on my back would stand up if I went by without stopping. I would imagine her looking at me out the window and wondering why I didn't come in. I would walk stiffly and with rapid steps, sure she was staring. I don't know why I would pass by sometimes. I think it was because I heard you weren't supposed to show too much interest in a girl or she would take you for granted. This one time, which is the day I saw smoke coming from the trees, but this comes later, I went right to her front steps without any of those interfering thoughts. "She's not in," I heard from the kitchen before I could knock. It was Mrs. Swenson, who knew without looking who was there. "She's gone out back." I heard her go to the back window and call for Gabrielle, and in a minute I heard her happy steps clopping along the plank floors to the front door. I held some of the candies from Pete's mom out to her. "I think the Snickers is a little melted. It's hot." She didn't care. She took a couple of them, but not all. She never cleaned me out and invited me up to her room because she had something to show me. She always wore tan denim pants and black canvas shoes. Even at that age, I would watch her from behind as she climbed the stairs, not even sure yet why, but shy to allow myself to be seen doing it. She swung around the post at the top of the stairs as if she were in a Broadway musical and bolted off toward the bathroom to clean her hands, dirty from tending her garden. I went in and washed my hands with her. She inspected them before she would let me dry them off, and then we went to her room. Between her bed and the window overlooking the front yard and the road was a large dollhouse. She often showed me what was happening there, which could be anything from an imagined family drama to a missing cat. Nowadays, as she was older, she more often showed me a new arrangement of furniture. It used to be that my dad would make her things for the house. It was his hobby to make tiny furniture and other items for dollhouses, and he could earn good money for it, for many of his creations, sometimes selling a dining set for more than a real one would cost in the store. Birthday, by Christmas, by special day, he populated her house with all kinds of specialty items: credenzas, couches, beds, tea sets, even the mirror in the front hall. I think she missed him as much as I did, in a way. That day, she showed me one of the kitchen chairs. "Sparkles chewed it," she said, putting it in my hand. One of the rear legs was lightly mauled. "I can handle that," I said. I had learned a lot of the miniature trade from my father before the accident, and this would not be a problem. You'll see how easy it was, actually, and how it was a good opportunity to impress. "He's banned from this room for a while," she said. Then she showed me a few ideas about rearranging things. I gave my opinions, but I didn't care about them. I just liked listening to her voice and watching her soft jawline and her penetrating eyes as she moved the tiny pieces around and expounded upon her proposals. And her dirty blonde hair that she kept in a bun and fluffed out around the sides of her head. I mostly tried to keep her talking. After a while, her mother called Gabrielle down for dinner and offered for me to stay. "No thanks. My mom will be wondering." Gabrielle saw me out the door and watched me as I went down the driveway. I turned and gave her a last wave before continuing. I knew I wanted to marry her. The house and Catherine. As I made my way down the street, carefully holding the little chair, I could feel the rays of the sun going behind Mount Moosilauke and slapped my neck as a mosquito dug into it. I walked a little faster. I started smelling smoke and saw a black cloud floating over the trees off to the north. It wasn't forest smoke. It was too thick for that and put a greasy film on my tongue. I went into the woods a little way to see if I could glimpse what was going on. After about 50 yards, I could see flames through the trunks, along with lights from a fire truck and 2 police cars. It was an old house I had found someplace in there once, a really small one with broken windows and a sagging roof, something from time gone by. It burned fiercely, but I could tell the truck was already doing its job as the smoke got white with steam. I watched for a minute. If they saw me, they might want to ask questions, so I turned back. I would talk to Jeff about it the next day, and maybe we would go check it out. When I got home, my mother was finishing dinner, and I went upstairs to lie in my bed, kicking off my shoes. I was waiting for something. I could hear my sister in her room across the hall pushing something across the floor, God knows what, and before long, Mom called upstairs that dinner was ready. Catherine came to my door, leaned on the jamb with her arms folded, and said, "Dinner's ready." "I know, I heard her," I said. "Well, then, why don't you go down?" "I'll go when I'm ready." Catherine kept her arms folded and marched off to the stairs. "Cam isn't coming for dinner." Mission accomplished. I hopped out of bed, slipped into her room, replaced Gabrielle's damaged chair with one from Catherine's doghouse, put it back in my room, and went downstairs. "I'm here," I said. Catherine gave me a stinky face. I was grinning as I sat down. The 2 chairs were exactly the same. To fix the chewed one right, I would have to take the chair apart, make a new leg, glue it, and stain it. That would take a while. Now I could produce a new chair for Gabrielle the next day and do Catherine's one when I got around to it. Gabrielle would think I was up all night. Now do you know what I meant by an opportunity to impress? "Why are you grinning?" said Catherine. "I think you can see we didn't get along too well at that age. She was only 8 and I was always in the way. I really couldn't figure out what use it was to have sisters." Jeff. Early the next morning, I went to Gabrielle's house and snuck up on the front porch. I had wrapped the miniature chair up in birthday paper. I quietly carried one of their porch chairs to the front door, put the little chair on top of it, and snuck away again. Then I went to Jeff's house. That is, first I went back home for breakfast and stuff, and then went to his house. Jeff was in my class at school. We had always known each other and rarely said hi when we met or goodbye when we parted company. I explained what I had seen the day before, and he said he had smelled the smoke but didn't know where it came from. He got his shoes on and we went out to investigate. "I remember that house," he said. "We found that last summer. Remember we used it as a clubhouse?" "Yeah. Why didn't we do that this summer?" "I wonder if somebody moved in." "No way. That place was way too broken down. Maybe he was a homeless guy." That made Jeff frown with thought. We cut through the trees. There was a drive leading to the house, but it entered the road several hundred feet down. As we approached, we smelled the burned charcoal odor of the wet wood, but couldn't see the house itself because, as we learned when we entered the clearing around it, it was heavily damaged. The parts that hadn't burned had been pushed over by the fire department so they wouldn't be a hazard for exactly kids like us. There were no trespassing signs newly hammered to surrounding trees and stretches of police tape half-heartedly blocking off parts of the circumference, but we ignored them and went into the rubble. There was not even a chimney. Houses like that were the cheapest construction possible, and the propane stove and metal flue that had once heated the house were long gone. Even the old appliances had been taken away, probably for scrap. But there were other signs of more recent activity. There were 3 or 4 cheap tables that had been burned up, but which still had their aluminum folding legs stuck haphazardly around where the living room had once been. There were little bits of plastic chairs strewn nearby, and there were various pots and jars lying around, along with 2 or 3 camp stoves. "What do you think this was?" I said. "I don't know. It's weird. Why would somebody have tables and stoves set up out here? There aren't any beds or anything." If someone was camping, why wouldn't they do it in the real woods? We idly pushed the stoves around and pulled at the table legs. It wasn't such a thrill to be there after all. Everything was too damaged to be of interest, and our feet were sinking into the blackish mud that had formed from the burned material and the water from the fire truck. Still, we felt we had seen something and found something. The box. Then I saw something interesting. In the area that must have been the bedroom, I saw a very clean and pure-looking piece of lacquered wood. Just a small corner of something. Jeff couldn't see it even when I pointed it out. I went over to it and brushed away the mud. A square box, about 10 inches to a side, was buried in the muck. I squiggled my fingers down along its sides and then pulled up with all my might against the suction. When it was freed, I fell back on my rear end with a squelch. I stood up with the box and wiped away more of the mud. It was a solid cube, made of many smaller pieces, somehow fused or valenced together with some kind of dovetail joint. But the dovetails were not visible. The blocks betrayed no clue as to how the box had been constructed or what its purpose was. There was no handle or top, and its corners were rounded. The lacquer was thick and shiny, even with the devastation of the fire. Jeff weighed it in his hands and turned it over. There was no obvious top or bottom. Judging by its weight, it must have been hollow, but there was no discerning how it would open. We could not believe how it had survived in such good condition. Maybe somebody buried it, said Jeff. Yeah, then maybe the water washed it up toward the surface. We decided to take it back to my house. Afraid my mother would be mad about the mud covering us in our shoes and jealous of showing anyone the box, we took it to the barn. It wasn't much and wasn't used anymore, but it came with the farm, and we had always kept it in decent shape. It served as an oversized tool shed, with both lawnmowers in there and my dad's car, which we didn't use, but to get it started once in a while and drive it a little, hoping the police wouldn't mind. There was a sink and some rags in there, and I wiped the box down. It was made of a supple cherry and cleaned up very well. Good as new, in fact. We sat on the ground and tried to figure out how to open it up. It was so tightly made that we couldn't tell where the top was. Maybe it's just a decoration, said Jeff. I kept turning it over and over and pushing each piece of wood, then trying to slide them. I think it might be one of those Chinese boxes where you have to hold it just right to get it open, you know? Yeah, let me try. Jeff did the same as I, with the same results. This went on for several minutes until I set it on the ground between us in frustration. Just then, 2 of the blocks slid out from the sides of the box. I looked at Jeff. What was the last thing we did to the box? He didn't know. I reached to the blocks protruding from the sides, trying to twist them this way and that. I didn't dare push them in lest they disappear again. After some experimentation, I tried holding the 2 blocks and turning them simultaneously. Like magic, the top part of the box started to open, as if pushed by a silent hydraulic spring. First fairly quickly, then slowing to an imperceptible motion as it reached a 45-degree angle. Jeff and I looked at each other. There was nothing inside the box, just a cherry interior. I could see no hinges for the cover. Not knowing what else to do, I started putting my hand in, and it went snap. The box closed violently. I pulled my hand back instinctively and barely missed having my fingers get caught. I glared at it with anger for a moment, then saw that the handles had receded into the box. What the heck was that? Said Jeff. I don't know. Why did it close? I picked the box up and tried to reproduce how I had gotten the handles to come out before. This process was even more frustrating than the last, because I couldn't make anything happen at all. We tried and tried, trying to remember exactly what we had done, and even what we had said the last time, but to no avail. Finally, we gave up and agreed to hide it in a trunk that sat alongside the wall and only held old paint supplies. We decided we would try again tomorrow. After dinner, I went back out there and tried again, but nothing happened. Nothing at all. Catherine ruins everything. The next morning, I was out at the barn as soon as the sun rose. I was going to open that box. I sat down again where I had been before and tried replicating my motions just like yesterday. Push both sides, place on ground. I couldn't get anything to open. "Damn you, box," I said. I picked it up and, scanning the house to make sure no one was looking, I crept across the yard, opened the side door just wide enough to get in, tiptoed up the stairs, and put it on my desk. I closed the door quietly and then sat down to look at the box. I remembered something Pete had told me. It was a few days before he left, and he was showing me how the push mower worked, where the oil was, how to prime it, all that sort of thing. He said to make sure I didn't let Catherine help me while I was using the mower, because sometimes little kids run over to the mower without realizing, and you can't hear them, and then they get hurt. He said never to reach under the mower if anything got stuck there until it was off, the choke was all the way back, and the starting lever was off. That is, unless I wanted to fertilize the grass with my fingers. But he also said that when it wouldn't start, the best thing to do was to set your body, grab the pull rope, and then close your eyes for a few seconds and focus. Then pull. That'll work for a lot of things, he said. Get set, close your eyes, and focus. So that's what I did. I sat with my hands on either side of the box, closed my eyes, focused, and then in one motion opened my eyes and pushed the handles with purpose, but without thinking. And the handles came out. I turned them, and the box once again slowly opened. I was amazed. Come to think of it, I was surprised that I had set it right side up. The only way you could tell which way to stand it was that the wooden slats in the bottom were slightly darker, but I hadn't taken note of that before. Just then, I heard the bedroom door squeak. It only did that when it was mostly open. I whipped my head around and saw Catherine in the doorway, frozen and staring at me like a scared rabbit. "What are you doing here?" "What's the box?" "You sneaked the door open." "I wanted to see what you were doing." She wasn't yelling. "Show me or I'll tell." "Oh, all right. It's just a box I found in the woods." "The woods?" "Yes, the woods. Now shut up about it. It's mine." "What are you going to do with it?" "I don't know. It doesn't have anything in it." Catherine walked forward and started to reach for it. "Don't," I said. "It snaps down on your fingers." She leaned over to look at it. "It's cool. Have you put anything into it?" "Thanks to you, no. I just got it open." She took a pencil out of the tin can on my desk and started putting it into the box. I grabbed it from her. "No, I'll do it." I put the pencil slowly toward the box and put the eraser into it. Nothing happened. "Usually it snaps closed," I said. "Maybe you need to put something smaller in." She picked up a G.I. Joe that I had sitting on the desk almost amongst other action figures and threw it in. The box snapped shut loudly. I flinched. "Why did you do that?" I said, pushing Catherine away from the desk. "I'm telling." "Don't tell or I'll kick your dollhouse. Then you'll really be in trouble. Just don't tell. Here, let me see if I can get it open again." I tried where the handles had been. "Damn it," I said, "now it won't open." "You swore." "Shut up with all your nya. I turned back to the box, picked it up, and shook it. I couldn't hear anything moving inside. "Maybe it's wedged," said Catherine. "It's not a big box." "Maybe," I said. "Wait. Just be quiet for a minute." I went through the same ritual of setting, focusing, and pulling. It didn't work. Now look at it. "Why did you throw that in there?" We heard my mother's footsteps. "What are you two arguing about?" she said, still down the hall. Quick as a fox, I put the box under my bed and went back to my desk. Mom came around the corner. "We're not arguing," I said. "She was just grabbing my G.I. Joe." Catherine almost said something, but stopped herself. Mom told us to be down for breakfast and left. I glared at Catherine, and surprisingly, she looked guilty. "Maybe it only opens once a day," she offered. "That's stupid," I said. "Go downstairs." She went, and after trying the box a few more times, I put it back under the bed and followed.